So my name is Jeremy Phillips. I'm known as Jerry, and I'm the leader of the hazard modelling activity in the Tomorrow Cities project. I'm the co-leader of Work Package 3. So the aim of Work Package 3 is to compute impacts associated with natural hazard events. We take scenarios for future urban development from work packages 1 and 2 in the project, and then we compute the consequences of hazard events on those scenarios for urban development. The scenarios for urban development you can think of those as being an urban development plan, a representation of people's visions of how they would like their urban future to be, and those urban plans are set in a context where there are natural hazard events that might affect different parts of the planned development in different ways. We compute the consequences of those hazard events in terms of a loss that's associated with the impact of that hazard. So in that way we can assess the consequences of making different choices about the urban development layout, and we can consider different effects. So as well as considering just the impact on the physical structures, we can also compute the consequences of the disruption that's caused, for example, by schools being closed or by the transportation network being disrupted. So it gives a more holistic view of the impacts of hazard events than just focusing on the hazard events themselves. To be successful at reducing disaster risk for the cities of tomorrow, it's important to think about the impacts that the hazard events have, rather than purely trying to just characterise the extent of those events themselves. And what I mean by that is we need to think about how hazards affect people. And it's important to recognise that the consequence of those hazards is not just damage to the urban environment, it's also disruption, it's affecting people negatively in terms of reducing their ability to work or for their children to go to school. So it's really important to have a way of characterising the impacts of these events that takes that into account. So we need to be thinking about what are the impacts on people and trying to understand different urban futures in that way. An example of that is the work we've been doing in the project in Quito, and we're working on a planned urban development that's in the north of the city of Quito, and it's very clear from engaging both with the municipal decision makers, the risk managers and the urban planners, as well as the communities, that the major impacts of hazard events there are going to be on the disruption to people's lives and the disruption to transportation, rather than simply just the potential damage to the houses in which those people live or the infrastructure that surrounds them. So it's critically important to be able to include a quantification of these effects of disruption in being able to genuinely assess the impacts of the hazards.